My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 40 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my family stole my adoption records, what I went through because of it, and what happened when I finally found the proof. I was 10 years old when my parents sat me down in the living room. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was the day everything changed. My mother was smiling. My father was holding my hand. They were both looking at me with love in their eyes. Samantha, my mother said, we need to tell you something. Something we should have told you a long time ago. I said, what is it, Mom? She said, you're special. You're our miracle. We didn't give birth to you. We adopted you. We chose you. We picked you out of everyone in the world. You're our gift. I was shocked. I was confused. I didn't understand. I said, what do you mean? You're my parents. You raised me. You loved me. How can you not be my real parents? My father said, Samantha, we are your real parents. We raised you. We loved you. We gave you everything. We are your parents in every way that matters. But we didn't give birth to you. We adopted you when you were a baby. My mother said, we wanted you to know the truth. We didn't want to keep secrets from you. We wanted you to know how special you are. We wanted you to know how much we love you. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel. I said, I don't understand. Where did I come from? Who are my real parents? Why did they give me up? My mother said, we don't know, sweetheart. The adoption was sealed. We don't have any information about your birth parents. We only know that they loved you and wanted you to have a better life. I was confused. I was hurt. I was angry. I was sad. I didn't know how to feel. I said, why didn't you tell me before? Why did you wait so long? My father said, we didn't know how. We didn't want to hurt you. We didn't think you were ready. But we think now you are. I ran to my room. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. For 30 years, I searched for my biological parents. I looked everywhere. Asked everyone. I found nothing. It was like I had been erased from existence. It was like I never existed before them. It was like I was a ghost. I went to adoption agencies. I went to hospitals. I went to courts. I went everywhere. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I hired private investigators. I hired lawyers. I hired everyone. I spent thousands of dollars. I spent thousands of hours. I spent everything. I spent my youth. I spent my money. I spent my sanity. I found nothing. There were no records. There were no documents. There was nothing. It was like I had never existed. It was like I was never born. It was like I was a figment of someone's imagination. My parents said, Samantha, maybe it's for the best. Maybe you're not meant to find them. Maybe you should stop searching. Maybe you should move on with your life. I said, Mom, I can't stop. I need to know. I need to know where I came from. I need to know who I really am. I need to know the truth. My mother said, Samantha, you are who you are. You don't need to know where you came from. You just need to know who you are now. You need to let go of the past. But I couldn't let go. I had to know the truth. I had to know who I really was. I had to know where I came from. I had to know everything. When I was 35, I started to suspect something. I started to suspect that my parents were lying to me. I started to suspect that I was never adopted. I started to suspect that the adoption was a cover-up. I noticed things. I noticed that my parents were always vague about my adoption. I noticed that they always changed the subject when I asked questions. I noticed that they never had any documents. I noticed that they were hiding something. I started to ask more questions. I said, Mom, where are my adoption papers? Where are the documents? Where is the proof? Where is the evidence? My mother said, Samantha, I don't know. They were lost. They were destroyed. We don't have them. We never had them. I said, Mom, how can they be lost? How can they be destroyed? You must have some records. You must have something. My mother said, Samantha, I don't have anything.
I'm sorry.
I wish I could help you, but I don't have anything. I said, Mom, I don't believe you. I think you're hiding something. I think you're lying to me. My mother said, Samantha, you're being dramatic. You're always so dramatic. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to lie about. You just need to let this go. But I couldn't let it go. I had to know the truth. I started to investigate. I started to look for proof. I started to look for evidence. I started to look for answers. I started to look for the truth. I went to the adoption agencies. I went to the hospitals. I went to the courts. I went everywhere. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I found nothing. There were no records. There were no documents. There was nothing. It was like my existence had been erased. It was like I was never born. It was like I never existed. But I didn't give up. I kept going. I kept searching. I kept believing. I kept hoping. I kept fighting. I kept pushing. I talked to people. I talked to relatives. I talked to friends. I talked to anyone who might know something. I talked to anyone who might have seen something. I talked to anyone who might have heard something. One day, I talked to my aunt. She was my mother's sister. She was the only one in the family who ever seemed to care about me. She said, Samantha, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Something I've been hiding for years. I said, Aunt, what is it? What do you need to tell me? She said, I don't think you were adopted. I think your parents took you. I think they stole you from someone. I think there's something very wrong with your adoption. I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, Aunt, what do you mean? What are you talking about? She said, I don't know the whole story, but I know your parents were desperate to have a child. I know they would do anything to get one. I know they would do anything to keep you. I was 40 years old when I got a letter from a lawyer. His name was Mr. Thompson. He was 75 years old. He was retired. He had been a lawyer for 50 years. The letter said, Dear Ms. Reynolds, I have been trying to reach you for many years. I have information about your birth and your adoption. I have been keeping a file for 30 years. I think it's time you knew the truth. Please come to my office. I will explain everything. Sincerely, Mr. Thompson. I was confused. I was curious. I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't know if I was ready for the truth. I went to his office. He was sitting at his desk. He was old. He was tired. He was ready to tell the truth. He said, Samantha, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for 30 years. I wanted someone to know the truth. He reached into his drawer. He pulled out a file. It was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. He said, Samantha, I have a file on your parents. I have a file on everything they did. I've been keeping it for 30 years. I wanted someone to know the truth. I opened the file. I started reading. I couldn't stop. The file was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. The first page was a summary. A single sheet of paper that listed everything. Everything they had done to me. Everything they had taken from me. Everything they had destroyed. Summary of illegal adoption and kidnapping of Samantha Reynolds, 1988. I read the words. My heart stopped. Illegal adoption. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds did not legally adopt Samantha. They did not go through proper channels. They did not have legal custody. They took the child without permission. They stole her. They kidnapped her. Kidnapping. Samantha was taken from her biological parents. The biological parents were young. They were poor. They could not fight for their child. They could not afford a lawyer. They could not afford to get her back. Financial coercion. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds paid the biological parents. They gave them money. They gave them everything. They told them they would never see their child again. They told them to forget about her. They told them to move on with their lives. Emotional destruction. The biological parents were devastated. They were broken. They never recovered. They never had another child. They spent their whole lives looking for her. They spent their whole lives hoping to find her. I turned the page. Behind the summary were the details. Page after page after page of evidence. each one a knife in my heart. August 20th, 1988. Samantha Reynolds was born. She was a healthy baby girl. She was beautiful. She was perfect. She was wanted. August 22nd, 1988. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds approached the biological parents. They offered them money. They offered them everything. They said they would give Samantha a better life. They said she would have everything. August 25th, 1988. The biological parents signed the papers. They were young. They were poor. They were desperate. They thought they were doing what was best for their child. They were wrong. August 27th, 1988. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds took Samantha. They took her home. They raised her as their own. They lied to her for 40 years. They told her she was adopted. They never told her the truth. September 1st, 1988. The biological parents tried to get Samantha back. They went to the authorities. They went to the courts. They went everywhere. They were told they had no legal rights. They were told they signed away their rights. They were told to move on. The biological parents never gave up hope. They searched for Samantha for 40 years. They never stopped looking. They never stopped hoping. They never stopped loving her. I documented everything. I documented everything they did. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted Samantha to know the truth. I wanted her to know who she really is. I read the entire file. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I realized everything. My parents had never adopted me. They had stolen me. They had kidnapped me. They had taken me from my real family. They had lied to me for 40 years. They had destroyed my life. They had destroyed my real family. I called Mr. Thompson. I said, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Why did you let me suffer all these years?" He said, "I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think you were ready. I was afraid. I was afraid of your parents. I was afraid of what they would do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I said, "Mr. Thompson, thank you. Thank you for keeping the file. Thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for giving me my life back." He said, "Samantha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the pain you suffered." I said, "It's okay. I understand. You were trying to protect me. I know that now. I forgive you." I started to search for my real parents. I used the file. I used the records. I used everything. I used the truth. I found them. They were old. They were broken. They were devastated. They had spent their whole lives looking for me. They had spent their whole lives hoping to find me. I went to see them. They were living in a small apartment. They had nothing. They had spent everything trying to find me. They had spent their whole lives hoping. My mother was crying. She said, "Samantha, I knew you would find us. I knew you would come back. I knew you would find us. I never gave up hope. I always believed you would come." My father said, "Samantha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't keep you. I'm sorry we couldn't protect you. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry we lost you." I said, "Mom, Dad, I'm here now. I found you. I finally found you. I'm never going to leave you again. I'm going to be part of your life. I'm going to be your daughter." We hugged. We cried. We started to heal. We started to become a family. We started to love each other. I went to my parent house. I had the file in my hand. I had the proof. I had everything. I had the truth. My mother was in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner. She didn't look up when I walked in. She said, "Samantha, what are you doing here? You didn't call." I said, "Mom, we need to talk." I placed the file on the counter. I said, "Mom, do you know what this is?" She looked at it. She said, "What is this?" I said, "This is a file from Mr. Thompson. It's a file on you. It's a file on everything you did to me. It's a file on all your lies. It's a file on your kidnapping." I started reading from the file. I read about the kidnapping. I read about the payment. I read about the lies. I read about everything. I read about the truth. My mother's face turned pale. She said, "Samantha, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Mom, I have proof. I have evidence. I have everything. You kidnapped me. You stole me from my real parents. You destroyed my real family. You lied to me for 40 years. My father came into the room. He said, "Samantha, what's going on?" I said, "Dad, you kidnapped me. You stole me from my real parents. You destroyed my real family. You lied to me for 40 years." My father said, "Samantha, I didn't know. I didn't know what she was doing. I thought we adopted you. I thought everything was legal. I didn't know she took you." I never spoke to my parents again. I never saw them again. I never wanted to. I moved on. I rebuilt my life. I found happiness. I found peace. I found my real family. I am 40 years old now. I have a good life. I have a good job. I have good friends. I have everything I ever wanted. My parents are old. They are alone. They have nothing. They lost everything. If you've ever discovered a devastating truth about your own identity, I want you to hear something. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You didn't deserve to be used. You didn't deserve to be manipulated. You didn't deserve to be taken advantage of. You deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know who you really are. You deserve to be loved. My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 40 years old. I found out my adoption was fake. And I found my real family. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below. Tell me the word that describes what you feel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening to mine.